Thank you. I forgot to say Nathan's come from Emu Plains this morning too to be with us. So that's great you made that sort of trip this time of the morning. That's right, and heading to Berry. All right. So Gary is going to bring us our reading this morning. Thank you. And as Gary, I heard him say this morning from upstairs, he said it's a doozy. So strap yourselves in. Here we go.
Good morning, everybody. The reading this morning is from Matthew 10, verses 24 to 39. A disciple is not above the teacher, nor a slave above the master. It is enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave like the master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they malign those of his household? So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, fear them who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground unperceived by your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And one's foes will become members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. In this is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Gary, if you're a daughter-in-law who doesn't get on with her mother-in-law, then you know who to blame, right? It's Jesus. Jesus is the fault of all your problems. Oh boy, what a reading, hey? If anyone says about us that we're not an evangelical church, then strap yourself in, because this is as evangelical as I get. This passage stirs me to my core. These are the passages that kind of get me going, and I've got to be careful to put a lid on it myself. I'm channeling my Billy Graham. I went to, when I was in about year 10 at high school in 1979, Billy Graham came to Australia, and I went a few times, and the buses would wait, the music, Just As I Am, would play, and all that kind of stuff, you know. Well, strap yourself in, all right? In this passage of Scripture, Jesus is talking to his close 12, to his closest 12 disciples. This is an intimate, targeted teaching. He's preaching to those who have or will be given the most responsibility, but also be given the most trouble going forwards. Today's passage is not for the faint-hearted. If we join ourselves in with this group that are called disciples, today's passage of Scripture is not for the faint-hearted. This is a decision-making day, really. Today's a day in the lectionary calendar where you get to say, you know what, from here on, I'm moving on this way. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's a gutsy, courageous, costly passage of Scripture, like the message in it. asks us the question, are we prepared to pay the cost? Are we prepared to be courageous? Or are we going to go back into this a saccharine sweet kind of version of Christianity that just tries to make people feel nice? Or that doesn't cost us very much? Today's passage of Scripture reminds us that in the Christian faith, we are defined by what we take up, not by what we give up. See, and that might sound a bit odd. And where I'm gathering that from is that, 20th century in particular, 20th century Christianity, when I was growing up in my schoolyard, in my church, in my group, my friendship groups, what people were rejecting was all of this, what they had to give up. It seemed like Christians were the fun police. Because Christianity meant you had to give up the good stuff. The drinking, the smoking, the going to the pub, the dens of iniquity, You had to give up the having second desserts because that sort of fitted into gluttony. Sex with anybody was kind of seen, and dancing because it might lead to sex, like it was all these things. Christianity was defined by the boundaries that we put up, and people looked in and said, you know what, I don't like that. You just seem like a bunch of miserable people who were putting on some sort of happy face. And we managed to make Christianity this kind of defined set of behaviours, what we shouldn't do. Now, I'm not saying leave here today and go to the pub and have lots, where you go take up drugs and, smoking. And I'm not saying that either. The opposite. It's not the flip side. But what I'm trying to say is that our message, rather than being one that said, this is a way, are these things leading you to life? What we would just simply say is, that's death. And we made it sound like a judgment, as if we had the right to judge. And people rejected the faith because they were rejecting us for our morality, our moral high ground, our moral superiority. But you see, today's passage reminds us, again, I'll say it a few times, that the faith should be defined by what we take up, what we choose to consciously take up, as opposed to what we give up. There's value in giving up. Don't get me, I don't want to make it sound like it's one or the other, full stop. Because sometimes there is value in giving things up for a little while, to reassess. Give up social media, give up TV, give up chocolate for a while, to work out whether it's adding life. Give up drinking, do the dry July or whatever. I'm not saying there's not value in those things. Sometimes there is value in giving them up. But that's not our leading voice. Our leading voice is, what are we choosing to take up? Rather than a faith defined by moral purity, our faith should be known for our courage, regardless of the cost. It's a harder road. It's a road far less travelled. Even by Christians, it's a road far less travelled. To take up our cross and to try and walk with it on our backs. And to, when we stumble or fall, to stand up again and keep going. It's a tough road. And Jesus is saying that to his disciples, his followers, which I hope includes you and me. It's a hard road. Now, the words of comfort come next week or the week after, and I don't want to land there today too strongly. I don't mind if you walk out of here today disturbed, disrupted, confronted. of course, if you get to Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday and you're angry with me for what I've said today, please give me a call. The question is, what are we taking up? That's probably the question I'm trying to set up at the moment, is if I'm talking about what we take up when we take up the cross, what is it that we're taking up? What do I mean by that? What do we think Jesus meant by that? And I think what Jesus was trying to say to his disciples in his time, so I'm doing the hermeneutics right now, what did it mean to Jesus' time and what might it mean to us? And I think what Jesus was trying to say in his time, when he says, take up your cross, he's saying, take up your resistance to the empire. Take up your resistance to the way things are, to the systems that oppress. Take up your resistance to the systems that alienate people. Take up your resistance, stand in the face of indifference in our world that just says, that's not my problem, that's somebody else's problem. Take up a resistance to hatred and to violence and to war. Take up a resistance to greed. Be courageous enough to stand up in the face of privilege and entitlement and power used for personal gain or used over others. And have the courage to say, I don't belong to you. It's not my way. It's not the way I'm choosing. It's not where I belong. It's a way of saying, rather than you getting to put a cross on me, rather than you getting to burden me with the systems of greed and violence and power, and rather than you getting to do that to me and me being a victim of it all, I'm going to take up a different way, and a way I know you don't like. I'm going to walk back into your face and show you a different way. You can call me a recalcitrant. You can call me a zealot. You can call me crazy. I don't care. This is the way I'm going. I'm following in the way of Jesus. And what I am choosing to take up are some of those values we've been talking about. Some of them are on some of our posters. I name some of these things just about every week. But rather than being passive and letting indifference and privilege and all that kind of stuff just kind of soak in and become part of our fabric, I'm actually choosing a way. I'm choosing a different way. And the way that I am walking, the cross that I am bearing, the action that I am choosing to take is one of love or compassion, generosity, gratitude, humility, peacemaking, justice, kindness, inclusion. And I'm going to let them determine who I am and how I act in the world. That's why I don't belong. Because I'm going that way. And Jesus makes it very clear in the passage we read today that choosing that pathway, taking up that cross, will make you enemies. It will be confronting. When we call for people to be generous or to be equitable, people will get upset. No, you're not taking you're not taking my stash. You're not taking what I've earned. You're not taking what I own. when we stand in the face of indifference with love and compassion, and we say, rather than what about me, we say, what about them? It puts people out. People go, well, that's their problem. Or if only they'd made different decisions in their life. Or they've had just as much opportunity as I've had. Why are you giving them special privilege? When we start to talk about the idea of peacemaking, the first word that often comes out of people's mouths is but. But you don't know all the things. Or if we talk about one of the words I didn't raise, but forgiveness. But you don't know what they did. Or you don't know how evil they are. Or you don't know. I could go on. We're called to walk in the face. I do just want to knuckle down into one part of today's reading this morning, because it comes to us a little bit in a way that makes, and this passage is used by people who want to portray Jesus as condoning violence. And there's a line in there where Jesus says, I didn't come to bring peace but a sword. And you may have heard that passage used at different times. And certainly if I was to say to you, if you've ever seen a cartoon or a meme or whatever of a machine gun toting Jesus, I could just about swear to you that part of the justification of this will be Jesus. But Jesus said, I came to bring a sword. I could go through all the textual kind of unpacking of that, because it's only in the book of Matthew that we get that version of it. The Gospel of Luke goes a little bit further, but it's only in the Gospel of Matthew where we get this idea of the sword. And I think the closer idea to it is when we read the Gospel of Luke. But I think what Jesus is saying here, what's happened in our translation of it, is that we get the cause and effect mixed up. It's not that Jesus came to cause people to take up swords. He doesn't come with that intention. He doesn't come saying, look at any other passage where violence gets close to around Jesus, and Jesus shuts it down pretty quickly. So this stands out on its own. And what Jesus, I think, is trying to say, rather than, I have come to bring war, or I have come to bring anger, or I have come to bring violence, I have come to bring these kind of family disputes, that's the reason why I came, is how it reads. It's more of an effect that we're meant to read it as. Because I have come, and I talk about love, and I talk about compassion, and I live out healing, and I live out forgiveness, and I live out kindness and humility, and because I have come and I live out generosity, and I'm calling you to do the same, people around you will be confronted. That's what Jesus is saying. It's the effect of. You will gain enemies when you choose the pathway that I'm putting in front of you. People won't like it. They will be disrupted. They will get angry. They may draw swords on you. Does that make sense? I don't know if that helps or not, but it certainly helps me. Friends, I just want to finish in this space, which I think Jesus ends in this kind of hopeful space for us. It sounds like a really deep challenge. If you want to gain your life, you're going to have to lose it. If you want to try and save your life, you will lose it. If you want to gain your life, then you've got to take up your cross and follow me. So friends, I'm trying to say to you, I'm trying to paraphrase Jesus here and just say, I don't know about you, but I'm always trying to seek what life might look like. And this morning's reading calls us to say, to see this sense that life lived abundantly is a life that takes up the cost of following in the way of Jesus, the courageous, costly way. That's where life is. That's where life is. We're going to sing. Now, I'm familiar, where this song is will be unknown